What is not a bullet you dodged, but a huge tactical nuke you dodged? In UNI, me and my two best friends were drinking, playing Mario Kart and just shooting the shit. We were hungry and wanted food. I said let's just make a tombstone pizza because we've been drinking and most delivery services were closed at 1:30 AM. One said he's fine to drive. I said no, bad idea. He got the other guy to go with. McDonald's usually doesn't take 2 hours to get, so eventually I went for a scooter ride since McDonald's was less than 2 miles away. I noticed there's a taped off spot on the bridge right before McDonald's with a crane, cops and an ambulance. They curbed the car and drove it off the bridge and into the shallow creek top first and died on impact. I dodged the nuke of death but ate the bullet of survivor's guilt for nearly 5 years. Edit, was not expecting all the upvotes, awards and positive feedback. Thank you everyone who read this and felt something, because life is tough and you never know when it's the time. Have a nice day and thank you all. Edit, based off the comments I guess I have a few things to add. 1, I am doing good. Depression and fear of driving lasted a pretty long time. Moving back home for 2 semesters helped a lot versus being alone in the college apartment we shared. 2, it's those old Razor scooters that you kick, not a moped or electric scooter. 3, I took the keys of the driver but he had a spare key and they left when I went to the bathroom. Got to the living room and they were gone, looked out the window and his car was gone. Verbally said "Foo-K, what an idiot, his dad is going to be livid if he gets pulled over." When I was 11 I started losing vision in my left eye, and eventually went completely blind in about 2 to 3 weeks. After lots of testing we found that I had a brain tumor in my left optic nerve that would likely spread quickly. They gave me a 1.5 years to live in the best case scenario with treatment. They got the eye surgically removed, started my on radiation and chemo, and luckily I responded well to it. Cancer's long gone, am now a Cyclops, and happy to be disease-free. I had just moved to Colorado by myself and for whatever reason my mom was encouraging me to get out of the apt and go see the new Batman movie. That was the night of the theater shooting, and not only was that the theater but it was also the showing I was considering going to. I stayed up late playing League of Legends instead and woke up to a lot of texts and missed calls. Probably not ideal for my family's blood pressure that I slept in pretty late that day too. I had some chest pains one night and woke up my wife to tell her. She got a little scared that it might be a heart attack and we agreed that I should go to the ER. The nurses were pretty sure it was a false alarm but would run an EKG as is common practice. In my head I was hoping that the chest pain would come back, not to prove a heart attack, but so that we can find out what the chest pain was. The EKG was done by one veteran nurse and a new nurse. I was watching over their shoulders. Something was flashing on the screen that made both nurses look at each other with disbelief. They ran it again and one nurse went out to the station for help. The other stayed with me and very nicely told my wife and daughter to go back out to the waiting room. A few seconds later 5 to 6 more people came into the room slowly and calmly and began prepping me for something. It turns out that I was having my second heart attack that night in the ER. The doctors and nurses found an obstruction in my heart and were prepping me to have it cleared and a stent placed. When I got out of surgery, the doctor who placed the stent told me, "You probably picked the best time and place to have a heart attack, right here in the ER." Edit number 2. The funny bullet I dodged during this event was that the doctor told me that when they put in the stent, they can go one of 2 ways. One entry point in the wrist and the other point is in your crotch. The male ER nurse had to prep the area just in case the wrist wasn't viable. Luckily for me, the wrist entry was successful. Smile. When I was 16, I had a good friend whose father was a wealthy businessman of some kind. This is Chicago and I guess his dad started screwing around with the wrong guy's woman. My friend told me it had something to do with the mob or a mobster's wife. I never knew for sure, but do know that I saw firsthand his dad get threatened, at a tennis court of all places, by 2 well-dressed clearly Italian men who drove up in a black Cadillac. I was sitting right there with his friend as they talked to him, and it was exactly as I imagined it would be in the movies. My friend said there was a contract on his dad. He actually said it like it was cool, and at the time, I guess I thought it was too. I was invited to go with them on a fishing trip in Lake Michigan that week, my friend, his dad's friend, and I. 2 days before the fishing trip, something happened with a member of my family and we had to go to Cincinnati for a few days. When I returned, I learned my friend's body was found floating in Lake Michigan. He was wearing a life vest. His father, his father's friend, and the boat were never found. Police questioned me about what I knew and who I'd seen talking to his dad, but I think I was lucky that I said I couldn't describe what they looked like and didn't get wildly specific. Either way, the coolest kid I knew, Chris, was dead. And they never found his dad, the dad's friend, or the boat. It was a nice boat on a calm day on Lake Michigan. And something bad happened. Always felt I dodged getting caught up in something I wouldn't have escaped from. We went to Thailand in 2003 for Christmas. I spent a number of years there in the early 90s as a kid, and loved it so much that we were gonna do it again the next year. Spend Christmas watching the sun come up on a beach at Phuket again. We had the tickets and everything, but because of some new fallout from an Enron-adjacent scandal, my dad wasn't allowed to leave the country. He wasn't implicated, but was in the C-suite of a credit card company, and all such people were under travel advisory. Anyway, the very hotel we were gonna stay at got 100% wrecked by the tsunami, so I guess we got lucky. Back in 2004, when I was only 20 years/0, I was on a road trip with my friend, and her dog, from California to Washington. I was on I-5 North at around 1 a.m., using my cruise control to keep my speed at 75 miles per hour, speed limit is 70 miles per hour. I'd gotten speeding tickets in that part of Northern California before. I was familiar with this drive because my BF was in LA and I lived in Seattle, so I made that trip a few times a year for a few years. All that is to say, I had learned my lesson and used cruise control to keep myself from speeding. Never going more than 5 over the posted speed limit. So it's pitch black, early morning. My friend has her seat reclined all the way, taking a nap on the passenger side, her dog on her chest. I see what I assume to be lights from a cruiser come up behind me. The car slowly pulls alongside me, and matches my speed exactly. I kept my eyes straight ahead, but I knew this person was staring at me. I wasn't panicking though, not like I had in the past when I'd encountered a cop on I-5, because I knew I wasn't really speeding. I kept glancing at the speedometer to assure myself I was good. I may have even slowed down a notch or two, to be certain. After what felt like an eternity of this cruiser just keeping pace with me, he finally slows down, swerves in behind me, and puts his lights on. As I'm slowing down and pulling off to the shoulder, I nudge my friend awake and tell her I'm getting pulled over. She asks if I was speeding. She knew my history, and I assured her I was not, and had been using cruise control. I was really starting to shake by this point. Cops make most people nervous, but something just didn't feel right about this stop. I knew there was no reason to pull me over. Pitch black, middle of nowhere, hadn't seen a gas station or rest area for miles. The guy strolls up to the passenger side of my car as my friend is using the lever to get her seat upright again. When he finally gets to the passenger side window, he looks visibly surprised that I have a passenger. He begins to fumble over his words, claims that I was going 90 miles per hour. He was so damn flustered he forgot to ask for my license. I actually asked him if he needed it. He trots back to his car and my friend and I look at each other like, WTF? Her dog, BTW, was going absolutely apeshit during this entire interaction. I never saw that dog act like that before or after this happened. Now remember, I'd gotten a few tickets on that same stretch of road, within that same year or two. I was very familiar with this process and knew how long it should take and what to expect. In my previous experience, most cops go back to their cruisers for a good 6-8 minutes. This guy came back after about 2 minutes. kinda tossed my license and registration into my friend's lap, like he was annoyed, and yelled at me to slow down and told me he'd just give me a verbal warning for now. I thanked him, despite how creepy it was, and while I was putting my license back in my wallet and registration back in my glove compartment, he fired up his cruiser and floored it back onto the highway. This is also not normal. Anytime I'd been pulled over, they would always tell me to pull out ahead of them, so they could make sure I merged carefully back onto the freeway. My friend and I were freaked. She was more freaked than me. I think I was trying to explain it away, give him the benefit of the doubt, at first. But the longer I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I became. I couldn't shake that nasty feeling that something wasn't quite right. Fast forward many years later, I remember hearing about some cop that had been arrested. He'd been trolling I-5 North in Northern California. During that same time period I'd been on road trips, stopping unsuspecting young single female motorists, and sexually assaulting them in his cruiser. His MO was to pull up alongside their cars, scan them to make sure they were single females, and pull them over in desolate areas at early morning hours. He ended up murdering one of these girls when she put up too much of a fight. I can't remember his name and I don't know what he looked like, it was too dark to see his face well. But my blood turned cold when I'd heard that. Definitely dodged a huge nuclear life-changing, possibly life-ending, event thanks to my tired friend and her protective little dog. Edit, I did not expect my inbox to explode over this. I am doing my best to reply to the comments, but maybe an umbrella edit is easier. Many of you are saying that you know this case from forensic files. The case I believe you're referring to is from the 80s and happened in San Diego. So, this was an entirely different cop that I encountered. As I stated above, I didn't see the guy's face. He wasn't close enough to the side of my car thanks to my friend's dog. Not only that, I got the impression he was trying to make sure his face remained out of view. I have done some light googling today to see if I can pinpoint this situation better and find an actual news article to point to and say, it's probably this guy. But I haven't been able to find any such thing, yet. Part of the problem might be because I got the year wrong. I said 2004, because to the best of my estimation that's when I believe this happened. That being said, it's possible that it happened as early as late 2002/early 2003 or as late as 2007-2008. I made so many trips to and from CA to WA and that friend of mine joined me at 2 to 3 of those times, so I'm not 100% sure what year this took place. Another problem? I also don't know exactly where, either. I say I-5 North in northern CA, it's a big long state. There are a few good long desolate stretches along that highway that are pitch black at night, for miles. They always blurred together for me before, especially at night. But if I had to guess, this happened somewhere in the abyss before or after Redding, California. Scary thing I have discovered today, there are a sickening amount of stories just like this in the news, old and new. Last, thank you for all of these awards, completely unexpected and super appreciated. I seldom open Reddit up in the morning and I don't think I've ever even commented on a Reddit post before 8 PM. Today, when I saw that question, this memory from that road trip flooded me and I just shared it with exactly zero expectations for any response, let alone this. Stay safe out there. Pro tip, thanks to those commenting, if you ever find yourself alone on the highway, getting pulled over by the police and you feel in any way, shape, or form uncomfortable pulling to the shoulder, slow your car down, turn on your hazards, and call 911. If you have no service, just keep driving until you do. Inform them of your predicament, they will relay this to the cop behind you who will gladly follow you to the safe place of your choosing to make a stop. Moreover, a 911 dispatcher will also be able to warn you that there's no cop in that location, which means you should keep driving and wait for the real police to arrive. 24 years old, had a pesky sore on my tongue that was really bothering me. My boyfriend's dad was a dentist, so when I was over at his house one night I asked him to take a look. He recommended I go see an oral surgeon the next day for him to check it out. The next day I decided it was feeling better, so I tried to cancel my appointment, but my boyfriend's dad insisted I go. I went, and the oral surgeon pretty much diagnosed it as cancer on the spot. It was aggressive, and by the time of my surgery to remove it, it had already spread to multiple lymph nodes. They ended up removing over half my tongue, followed by chemo and radiation. Given how aggressive it was, I often think that if I had put off the doctor's visit any longer, I probably wouldn't have survived. I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary in January. I was moving abroad to do a postgrad degree. My flight was to leave out of Newark early morning on the 11th of September. A family friend who worked in the towers kept prodding me to move my flight to the afternoon and come visit him in the office so he could show me around. My parents were pressuring me to go as well since it was a good networking opportunity. I was on the fence, but decided not to since I was a poor student and didn't want to pay the cab fare from my hotel in NJ to Lower Manhattan. Our friend made it out, thankfully, and I'm guessing I would have well, but no way would I want that experience burned in my memory. I was briefly engaged to a man who has since cheated on his gorgeous, intelligent, sweet wife hundreds of times. They are separated but have 2 children and will likely reconcile. I broke our engagement when he said that he thought it was perfectly okay for a man to cheat on his wife if they'd been married for a while and he'd gotten bored. Oddly enough, he didn't believe a woman was entitled to do the same. I feel so badly for his poor wife now. He began cheating on her 2 years into their marriage when she was pregnant with their first child. Guy on Grindr I was chatting with looked cute and we were chatting. He was too far though, and I was a student who didn't have a car, could not host in dorms. He was later arrested for purposely spreading HIV through Grindr hookups. This was in Edinburgh. Edit, for the record, this was before PrEP was available in Scotland and I don't think it's even relevant. I never even stated my safe sex practices. I actually was on PrEP though, but that doesn't change the fact that I dodged a bullet by not having sex with someone malicious enough to purposely spread HIV. Some of you are quick to jump on the victim-blaming bandwagon. The guy made national news and apparently also blackmailed men he slept him. My dodged bullet is less about HIV and more so that I did not encounter, and have sex with, someone with very malicious intent. There's a lot of you in the comments making assumptions about my sexual practices when I never even mentioned them. Nuke dodge number 1, X had some type of breakdown. I woke up with her standing over me with a butcher knife. She in some sort of catatonic state. I didn't move. I don't think she saw that I was awake. Then she left the room after a while, came back into our bedroom sans butcher knife, got in bed, snuggled me until it was time to get up. Then she made me some great waffles for breakfast, as cheerful as ever. Didn't get stabbed but still have trouble sleeping unless I'm alone in the room. Nuke dodge number 2, another ex cheated on me. She had wanted a baby. We both did, TBH. So she ended up getting married to the dude she cheated on me with, they had a baby, then she cheated on him and they got divorced. So wife's boyfriend is paying the child support. Life is fucking good. I met a girl one summer and she fell head over heels for me. She even ditched her fiancé for me, but when she went back home at the end of summer they got back together, and got married. I saw her again the following summer, and she wanted to pick up where we left off, but I said no. I ran into her years later. She told me all about her sex life, and how her husband could no longer satisfy her, so she was hooking up with random strangers from the internet while he slept in the spare room. They had 2 kids by that time. I felt sorry for them. Walking to work in the winter. Halfway through a step forward under a sky bridge when an icicle taller than me, 6, and probably 2 around at the base crashes down right in front of my nose. If my bus had been a half second earlier, if I had walked even a tiny bit faster pace, I would have been impaled from brains to balls. I was frozen in place for a minute, quietly surveying my near death. There was another pedestrian nearby who witnessed it, and the wide-eyed, ashen look on his face as he stared at me confirmed just how narrowly fortunate I was that day. I married my high school sweetheart when I was 23 and she was 21. We had been together for roughly 5 years at that time and were madly in love. We were married in April and she announced in mid to late May that she was pregnant. She had taken a test with her friend after feeling sick. I was so happy and excited that I didn't take the time to ask to see the test, she had just thrown it away. Fast forward a bit and she wouldn't let me attend doctor's visits and I gave her the benefit of the doubt for privacy and the such. But then she wasn't getting bigger at even the 6-month mark. I was suspicious and confronted her about it and she went off on me with the standard barrage of "How could you? And don't you trust me?" And she pointed out some weight gain. I was skeptical but loving and supportive of my wife. She had a rough life growing up and I felt as if I needed to be more patient and understanding. I reminded her that I will help her find help if she's not really pregnant, that I would love and support her and we would work through it. She said it wasn't necessary. Wifey started gaining weight more, especially in the belly, so I kept going moving forward as if she was pregnant. We had a name picked out, a full wardrobe of the first 3 clothing sizes, a fully decked out bedroom, etc. My family was suspicious but still supportive. Around month 8 it was painfully obvious she was not pregnant. I had already found her ultrasounds on Google, the weight gain stopped, she had a pancreas issue that she couldn't even eat enough to gain much weight, she had to be making herself sick to gain, and our relationship was deteriorating fast. I was remarkably patient. The due date came and went and I asked what the doctor was saying. "Oh, it's okay, the baby can sometimes be up to 2 weeks past due." And I had my date. I gave it 2 weeks and then laid down the cold hard truth: go to the hospital with me to see what's up with the baby/pregnancy or I'm gone right now. She went. I was not allowed to go back with her, she requested the doctors do not share with me. Wifey had told the doctors that she was there for an issue related to her pancreas issues. Never mentioned the possible pregnancy. I was permitted to visit her in her room and I looked her in the eye and told her it was over. I took the bullet, or rather shotgun blast from that issue. But I avoided being gaslit and manipulated for the rest of my life. Edit, this blew up so I'm going to continue the story to the aftermath as I wrote in a couple of comments. Sorry for any formatting/continuity issues but I didn't want to edit the comments. She disappeared, took another man's name, and ran from the process server so I could not divorce her. We're still legally married even though she lives as someone else's husband. I went through years of massive depression after this and I'm only just now in a financial and mental position to be able to finally solidify the divorce. That will be happening within the next year. She also went around telling people that I lied, I'm a horrible person for abandoning her, and that I was abusive and it caused her to lose the baby. The day after I left she came back to our house to gather things, attacked me, and then called the cops to say that I threw her to the ground. Luckily I knew enough not to be alone and had several witnesses to the situation. That did not stop her from filing an emergency protective order to have me thrown out of our home after I had left her. She then emptied the house, all of which was paid for by me or brought to the relationship by me because she had nothing due to her situation growing up. I lost every heirloom, keepsake, and picture that I had saved from my childhood until I was 24. I lost it all. And to this day all I have to show for it is a reputation as an abuser and a severe distrust of relationships. I'm not okay. I still deal with the fallout from this on a daily basis sometimes. Check my other lengthy comment about the fallout and come back to this. I tried to leave the woman I dated after her. It took me 5 years to date again and the rebound ended up getting pregnant early on. I tried to do the right thing and stick with her so my child would have 2 parents. She, too, ended up having mental health issues. Diagnosed while we were together. Hers showed in the form of child neglect and abuse. I ended up with full custody of my son, she hasn't seen him in 2 years. The fucked up part is that when I built my case and finally left the GF she reached out to ex-wife to try to plot against me. They came up with a plan for my current GF to do the same thing that the wife did to me. She filed a false protective order, drained my house of all of my stuff, since GF didn't work, and took my son and fled the state. GF said that I was regularly beating and raping her and my son. Luckily I had learned and had been keeping extensive records of everything to protect myself in the event that history repeated itself. I had records, messages, pictures, and witnesses the second time around. I've found it impossible to date since. I now have a reputation as an abuser and molester even though no charges were ever filed, the protective orders were thrown out of court with prejudice, and I won custody of my son from the second relationship due to all of this. I won. But at what cost?
In this little shop of horrors, that's how we get down. Yeah, enter the projects on the prairie, scary. Greet you at the gate with Bloody Marys. Blood, a rail full of blood. Back to the cemetery, get more blood. Standing on the grave, drinking blood, smoking bones. We seen a crew of ghouls running by with stolen tombstones. With Hell's Angels on the chase, they lost the bust of black skull. Want you embrace, they tie you up in chains and they stomp on your face. They go to purgatory and they beat the fucking case. I look around, mad bodies being buried in the ground.